You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the globe to bring you the latest developments in medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. It's time for the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville. Now, here's your host, Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Tuesday, November 7th, 2017, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. More importantly, it's got to be Election Day. I know this is an off-year election. Odd between the congressional and the presidential election. Everybody forgets that we have this election in lots of states, including Virginia and New Jersey. Real important votes going down there in Virginia and New Jersey that could have a huge impact on marijuana legalization. We'll tell you all about that coming up in the Cannabis headline news. Also on the program today in What in the News, I'm going to ask about this study we're going to tell you about youth use of marijuana. And it's just always boggled my mind that anyone ever thought legalizing weed for people over 21 would make kids under 21 more likely to use it. So we'll talk about that and give you some of my perspective. Also coming up on the program today, we've got Alex Rogers. He's the producer of the International Cannabis Business Conference as well as the Oregon Marijuana Business Conference. I'll be there at the Oregon Marijuana Business Conference next weekend from Ashland, Oregon. We'll bring you back some recordings from that event. Also, International Cannabis Business Conference. My interview with Doug Benson is up on hightimes.com now, getting a lot of play. And Doug will be headlining a VIP reception at the, I don't know if headlining is the right word. He will be at a VIP reception December 1st at the Kauai Grand Hyatt, where they're having the International Cannabis Business Conference. So you can check that out at hightimes.com. And we'll talk to Alex today about the International Cannabis Business Conference and where they'll be heading next. And then at the end of the show, we'll have time for a radical rant. And I know you'll feel a little bit of deja vu because I talked about this yesterday, the concept of treating guns like marijuana or vice versa. I had a chance to write all my thoughts down, do a little more research on it. So I'm going to deliver the polished rant today as best I can. If you've listened to me a lot, you can probably tell I got a little bit of a cold going on here, and we'll see what we can do to fix that. Make sure that everything still sounds good here on your side. But first, let's get to the news.
This is your Cannabis headline news. Brought to you by MarijuanaMoment.net. The complete source for all your marijuana news in one morning newsletter from Marijuana Majority Founder Tom Angel. Subscribe today for free at MarijuanaMoment.net.
This is your Cannabis headline news for Tuesday, November 7th, 2017. I'm Russ Belville. Today is Election Day in Virginia and New Jersey with huge ramifications for the expanse of legal marijuana. In the Garden State, Democratic nominee Phil Murphy, a former U.S. ambassador to Germany, wants to make New Jersey the next to legalize, regulate, and tax marijuana. Republican nominee, current Lieutenant Governor Kim Guadagno, opposes legalization but supports decriminalizing possession and expanding the state's current medical cannabis law. Murphy included a call for legalization during his primary election victory speech in June. In Virginia, current Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam supports decriminalizing marijuana and expanding medical cannabis access. Republican nominee Ed Gillespie, a former Republican National Committee chairman, doesn't support those outright changes, but has said he supports policies that would reduce marijuana arrests, as well as enacting a more limited expansion of the state's current low-THC medical cannabis law. South Dakota voters on Election Day could decide whether to allow patients to use cannabis medically. Initiative groups hoping to go before voters in 2018 faced a crucial Monday deadline to turn in signatures to the Secretary of State. Campaigns for 8 measures have submitted petitions for review. Initiated measures need nearly 14,000 valid signatures, while constitutional amendments require almost twice that many. Medical marijuana supporters submitted about 15,000 signatures, narrowly exceeding the required valid signature count for an initiative that would allow patients with serious medical conditions and a health practitioner's recommendation to use marijuana. Qualifying patients such as people with cancer, AIDS, and Hep C would be able to get a registration card to possess up to 3 ounces of cannabis. Last year, the Secretary of State's office said backers didn't turn in enough valid signatures to get on the ballot. South Africa's Constitutional Court will today hear the arguments for the complete legalization of cannabis, known as dacha, across the country. Julian Stobbs and Myrtle Clark have fought numerous legal battles over the years to have the plant decriminalized. Stobbs and Clark have even been dubbed the dacha couple, given their persistence to have the law recognize dacha as a legal substance. However, they have been since empowered by a ruling earlier this year. Back in March, the Western Cape High Court passed a landmark ruling. The court declared that it is an infringement to ban the use of dacha by adults in private homes. This trail was blazed by Dacha Party leader Jeremy Acton and Rastafarian Gareth Prince. Now that home use of dacha has been declared legal, Stobbs and Clark want to go one better this time. They want the Constitutional Court to make Parliament ratify it into law. The Criminal Justice Reform Bill released by the Massachusetts House on Monday would let individuals convicted of marijuana possession completely expunge their records. The marijuana provision is just one aspect of a more significant change. The bill would create a process for the first time for a criminal record in Massachusetts to be expunged. Today, records in Massachusetts can only be sealed. A sealed record is still available to law enforcement, probation officers, the court, licensing agencies, such as for someone applying for a gun, and other agencies allowed by state law. Someone convicted of marijuana possession can petition a judge to have their record sealed. Expunging means a criminal record would be completely wiped out. There are exceptions for certain dangerous offenses, such as those involving death or serious bodily injury, dangerous weapons, elderly or disabled victims, or sex crimes. The growing number of states enacting laws to allow medical marijuana use has not led to an increase in youth use of the drug, a new study finds. Quote, "We found no evidence of an effect of medical marijuana law enactment in any marijuana use outcome for both men and women aged 12 to 17, researchers at Columbia University wrote in the journal Prevention Science. Due to developmental concerns, medical marijuana laws are explicitly designed to restrict access to youth. As such, the lack of change in marijuana use outcomes among youth could reflect medical marijuana laws being implemented as intended. Although the study showed that state laws allowing medical cannabis aren't associated with increased teen use, it did indicate a rise in marijuana consumption among people over age 26. There was also an increase in daily marijuana use among males aged 18 to 25. However, researchers could identify no corresponding increase in marijuana use disorder after the enactment of medical cannabis laws, even in the age-gender subgroups reporting increases in past month and daily use.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Hi, I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. If you appreciate my full-time dedication to reporting and analyzing the news about cannabis, consider becoming a patron of the show. For just $4.20 per month, you'll help keep my live stream and podcast free while earning yourself your own private ad-free podcast link for the show, as well as links to the supporting articles and data. For a $9.99 VIP subscription, you'll get all that plus my exclusive research, data tables, and graphics. Just log on to mjaddenda.com and click the Become a Patron button today.
The Marijuana Agenda. Kevin Sabet's boogeyman since 2012.
You have offended my family, and you have offended Shaman Temple.
Yes, might have gotten away with it, too. If it wasn't for these blasted kids and their dog.
Looking for the 420 friendliest way to visit beautiful legal Potland, Oregon?
I'm Lori Duckworth, inviting you to come stay with us at Delta 9 House and Studios.
You get your own private room with queen bed and access to our high-speed Wi-Fi, premium entertainment system, and more.
We'll even cook you breakfast. Look us up on Facebook at Delta 9 House.
That's facebook.com/Delta9House. Delta 9 House is booked through Airbnb.com. City of Portland permit number 17-159855.
People should say no to drug use.
It's really, really easy.
Adding more gasoline to the fire.
Lackadaisical.
Really tough, really big, really great.
To infect and rot our nation from within.
Dangerous and gateway drugs.
We don't need to be legalizing marijuana.
To build and grow a stronger, healthier, and drug-free society.
In the news.
All right, today on What in the News, I want to start with that last story from the Cannabis headline news. about this study coming out of Columbia University. It's in the journal Prevention Science. And it just underscores what we found in study after study and survey after survey. And that is, instituting a medical marijuana law in your state does not lead to more marijuana use among teenagers age 12 to 17. A medical marijuana law does not lead to more marijuana use. Now, you'll get the people from Project Sam and other prohibitionists, Rocky Mountain, high-intensity drug trafficking area, and others who will try to play some statistical tricks with you. One of the things they'll do is they'll take a look at just the raw numbers, right? And say, here before legalization, it was at 10, and now it's up to 11 or 12, and ooh, bad things happen, right? Well, see, it's not as simple as just comparing number one and number two over the span of a couple of years. You also have to account for all of the confounding variables that are going on around it. And it gets into some heavy-duty stats and stuff that maybe you took in college, maybe you didn't. Maybe you have no clue what I'm talking about. But the basics of it is this. Marijuana use goes up and down. Whether you've legalized or you haven't legalized, marijuana use ebbs and flows. We saw this through the 70s, saw it through the 80s, saw it through the first half of the 90s, when nobody had medical marijuana laws, right? It just ebbs and flows. It can be, law enforcement has interdicted a whole bunch. There's a drought and less production. The fad has changed to a different drug, whatever. There can be all sorts of reasons. Cultural, sociological, economical, political, lots of reasons. But marijuana use goes up and down. And so you got to interpret it. Okay, so sure, maybe Colorado's teenagers went up from 10.5 to 11 or 11.5 or something like that. But did everybody else go up in the United States? Was the general trend upwards? Did Colorado go up more than you would have expected just any other state to have gone up? Or Washington or Oregon or California or whatever state you want to pick on. That's the kind of serious number crunching these guys at Columbia are doing, right? So don't let them fog you out by pointing at this number and that number or this bar and that bar and on some PowerPoint and trying to scare your mom and dad or trying to scare your grandma and grandpa, trying to scare your elected official. All you got to do is go back to the scientists, go back to the Columbia University people, and so many others. We could list a whole bunch of studies, but this one will do for now. Columbia University, Journal of Prevention Science. No increase in youth use, age 12 to 17. It didn't matter how they measured, by daily use, monthly use, annual use, lifetime use. No difference, no change. Medical marijuana laws did not raise that or lower it. Now, they did find in this study an increase in marijuana consumption among people over age 26. And this is something that you would expect, wouldn't you? You made a brand new medical option available to people, one that's kind of fun in addition to being medical, one with very low side effect, one with very good effect on all sorts of conditions, pain, insomnia, depression, stiffness, spasms, seizures, you know the list. So this is something where it's interesting that we don't hear the prohibitionists go off about that. Oh my God, more adults are smoking pot. Well, okay, good, right? You legalized it. You'd kind of expect that to happen, wouldn't you? At the very least, you'd expect people to be more honest about their current use. Maybe the use didn't go up, but now people are more honest about their use because they're not as worried about losing a job for saying they smoked weed legally. Could be a combination of both those factors. And if the prohibitionists want to paint this, this is where I want to go with this discussion, is that this is good news that the youth use didn't go up. However, I always caution us to be careful how much we rely on the good news stat about marijuana legalization. We need to make sure that the core of what we're doing is about justice, is about right and wrong, is about personal sovereignty, is about liberty, about rights. Because frankly, If marijuana use goes up by teenagers, that's still not enough reason to infringe on the liberty of an adult to use it. If the marijuana use goes up by teenagers, that is its own problem. Marijuana use by teenagers that we must find some way to solve. Marijuana use by adults is not that problem. See, I worry that as marijuana use ebbs and flows, like I said, through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, went up and down, what happens if marijuana use starts going up on the West Coast among teenagers or among the adults, which it is? Are we ready to have that discussion? Well, sure, the teenage marijuana use went up, but that's something we're going to have to think about, isn't it? I always like to take this to the idea of that these things don't happen in a vacuum, right? That you can't just evaluate legalization of marijuana and whether or not one statistic went up or down without comparing it to other statistics. Suppose the use of marijuana by teenagers aged 12 to 17 does increase, but suppose we also find a corresponding decrease in binge drinking. What if we find that kids are swapping, kids that are already prone to adventurous, risk-taking behavior, who would have had the senior kegger, what if they're swapping that for weed? Or what if they're moderating it? Maybe they're not swapping, maybe they're using both, but maybe smoking a doobie means they're not chugging 12 beers, maybe 4. In other words, you can't look at one stat in a vacuum. You got to look at it as an overall holistic harm reduction kind of thing. Did more kids smoke marijuana? Maybe. But did fewer kids lose a scholarship? Did fewer kids go to juvie? I mean, let's compare all of these statistics. The other thing in this study shows that there was an increase in the daily marijuana use among males age 18 to 25. Now, this is no surprise to me either, because males age 18 to 25 are the demographic of pot smokers. The biggest cohort of pot smokers out there are males age 18 to 25. Now, I have my own personal pet theory on this. I think the reason why it's so heavily weighted to males 18 to 25 is that cannabis use is a, how shall we say this? Marijuana use, smoking pot is a bit of a mitigator for raging testosterone. I really think young men who gravitate toward pot are self-medicating for just being young men. That being raging hormones, full of testosterone, new to the world, everything's a challenge, everything's a stressor. Maybe. It's just a theory. And who knows, maybe under legalization with less stigma and more access, maybe we do find an evening out. Maybe we find more women getting into it. But generally speaking, you look at the surveys, and the more often you smoke pot, the more likely you're male. You know that? Yeah. You look at the people who have just ever smoked pot in their lifetime, and it's a pretty close thing. It's like a 42 or a 52-48 male, right? 52% male, 48% female. You get to like monthly toking. Monthly token gets about 60-40, 60% male, 40% female. And you get to daily tokers, and it's damn near a 2-to-1 ratio. It's like 66-34, something like that. Like there's two, like if you smoke pot daily, you're twice as likely to be male than female. Which always leads to my little quip of, ladies, if you're looking for a guy, smoke more weed. Because there's plenty, it's a buyer's market, right? If you're looking for a guy, just smoke more weed and look for another guy who smokes a whole lot of weed. But maybe that changes as we legalize. Maybe with less stigma and more access and more women understanding what a fantastic remedy cannabis can be for menstrual cramps, for instance, headaches and all sorts of things. Maybe that number goes up. I don't know. I would like marijuana to not be such a boys' club. That would be kind of nice. Anyway, the study is out on Columbia University Journal of Prevention Science. The state medical marijuana laws, no increase in the use of marijuana by young people. But I caution, don't let the good news stat hold you hostage.
Leave us exit stage left.
All right, well, that sound means it's 20 after the hour. Time for us to take our union-mandated safety briefing. We'll also get our anti-drug public service announcement of the day. Got a whole new fresh load of them. Fresh load, that's probably the right word. And then when we come back, Alex Rogers from International Cannabis Business Conference. Stay tuned. If you work in the cannabis industry, consume marijuana, or just support freedom, you need to know about breaking policy news that affects you. Marijuana Moment is the daily newsletter that helps you stay on top of all the latest and most important state, federal, and international cannabis developments. Brought to you by longtime legalization activist Tom Angel, Marijuana Moment puts a concise yet comprehensive overview of cannabis news in your inbox early every weekday morning. Wake up to Marijuana Moment and rest assured you'll be ready for the cannabis news that's driving the day. Subscribe now at marijuanamoment.net.
You're not high. You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
This is high purity THC content marijuana, and it's not a healthy substance.
Okay, maybe you're a little high.
Hi, I'm Russ Belville. Join me as I cover the Marijuana Agenda at the Oregon Marijuana Business Conference the weekend of November 18th and 19th in beautiful Ashland, Oregon. The OMBC is Oregon's biggest and longest-running conference dedicated to the cannabis industry and marijuana activism. You'll hear an extended interview with influential State Senator Floyd Przansky, a VIP reception and keynote address from the legendary Henry Rollins, and a free after-party featuring music from Hieroglyphics and Souls of Mischief. Plus, you'll get information from 40 industry exhibitor booths and be able to question members of the Oregon Liquor Control Commission regarding cannabis issues they'll be ruling on. Visit OregonMBC.com to learn more and book your tickets now. That's OregonMBC.com for the Oregon Marijuana Business Conference. We'll see you there. Now, in the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Marijuana Agenda presents this anti-drug public service announcement.
Hi, KB. Who are your friends?
My classmate Ocean.
Peace and be happy, man.
My teacher, Mr. Plitt. Yeah, he makes class fun. He's cool and he knows lots of stuff.
Hey, dude.
Who are not your friends?
Well, there's these two guys at school, Jesse and Jeff. Jeff does drugs and he tries to get us to do it too. Jesse thinks he's cool because he hangs out with Jeff.
Hey guys, wanna have some fun?
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, get a life, guys.
This has been an actual anti-drug public service announcement. To combat this and other drug war hysteria, listen to the Marijuana Agenda every weekday at 3 p.m. Pacific at live.mjagenda.com. Hey everybody, it's Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda, inviting you to be like me and get your ink done at Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo, Fort Worth's most female-friendly, clean, sterile, awesome tattoo shop. Thomas and his crew are true artists who can design you a custom piece or use a design you bring in. Lucky Horseshoe also offers all styles of tattooing as well as piercings and all-around fun. In the DFW area, stop by Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Trust me, it'll feel awesome.
The Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
And let me be clear about marijuana. It is a potentially dangerous gateway drug that frequently leads to the use of harder drugs.
Whatever you're smoking, it's not marijuana.
Hi, I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. If you're a cannabis brand looking to build trust and awareness within the community, consider becoming a sponsor of this program. Your message will be seen and heard by the most dedicated followers of marijuana policy reform, who are loyal and supportive of those brands that give back to the community. Just log on to mjagenda.com and click the Become a Patron button to learn how your brand can also be featured in my live nationwide appearances. Thank you for your support.
The cannabis community is a diverse set of people from all walks of life, conservative and liberal, black and white, straight and gay. rich and poor, and everyone in between. Learn more about the people we are freeing from adult cannabis prohibition in our Cannabis Community Chat.
Welcome to another edition of our Activist Agenda. I'm Russ Belville, and joining me today, we have an activist from the Oregon area who started off with local conferences here in Oregon. He's now the head of the International Cannabis Business Conference coming up next in Hawaii, but we'll tell you about some of the other locations as well. It's our friend Alex Rogers on the phone. Hi, Alex. How are you?
I'm good, Russ. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, and it's so exciting to see how the International Cannabis Business Conferences have grown. I've covered a few of them, and of course, you started here in Oregon. That's where I met you, of course, and with the Oregon Marijuana Business Conference, although back in the day it was the Oregon Medical Marijuana Business Conference. Yeah. So I understand you got one coming up pretty soon. Tell us about how you got your start here.
Our next conference is in OMBC is in Ashland, Oregon, November 19th. It's our flagship conference. However, I kind of have some interesting news about that. We're going to have Henry Rollins, Souls and Mischief. It's going to be a blowout. I got my start by starting. I own a prominent medical marijuana clinic in Oregon. Well, two: Ashland Alternative Health in Ashland, Northwest Alternative Health in Eugene. Started that about 8.5 years ago. The Eugene one about 5 years ago. We were very successful. When the dispensary initiative passed, about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I started getting all these questions. There's a lot of mis and disinformation. It took the whole program to the OMMP to the next level, and it added some confusion to what was going on. So I realized then there was a need for to disseminate proper, clear, uniform information where everyone could be on the same page. And we started the OMMBC, medical marijuana. Then we went legal. I turned it into the OMBC, and we grew this conference to be by far the biggest in the state. Sure, there's bigger expos, but we're just a boutique expo, and we're mainly an informational event. So it's amazing when you come to an OMBC and you go into the speaker room and there's 400 people sitting there on the tips of their seats, wide-eyed looking at the content. It really is quite heartening. That being said, this Ashland OMBC could be our last OMBC because the ICBC, International Cannabis Business Conference, is taking up so much of my time as we expand globally.
Yeah, the next, the OMBC is in Ashland, November 18th and 19th, and that you can find information on OregonMBC.com. And like you said, we got, Hieroglyphics is going to be performing?
Hieroglyphics, Souls and Mischiefs performing the after party. It's included in all tickets, and we've got Henry Rollins doing the keynote. We've got an OLCC panel with Steve Marks is coming down for that, and a couple other important folks from OLCC. And we got Floyd Przansky doing an interview. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, State Senator Floyd Przansky has been a longtime champion going back to the medical cannabis days, and his influence has had a lot to do with making Oregon's laws what I consider to be some of the best in the nation.
That's right. I mean, a lot of people will complain about what's happened to medical during recreational, and Lord knows I'm not happy with it. But bottom line, I decided long ago to look at things from a patient's perspective or an individual user's perspective, and I realized that though I'm not for, and of course there's crazy thing happened at the legislature a couple of years ago when I really fought it hard, probably much to my peril. But I realized looking at cannabis public policy from a patient's or individual user's perspective is the right thing to do. And as long as the cops are arresting less people, I have the right to grow it still in my house. Then that's and that criminal penalties are being reduced all across the board, then that's what's most important to me. And if you look at what's happened since 91 has passed, besides the debacle with the medical marijuana, we've actually, the legislator and Floyd has led this up, has actually reduced a lot of other criminal penalties in the law for cannabis, like distribution, manufacturing, all that stuff. Has expanded, and they went above and beyond what Measure 91 had enumerated. Mm-hmm. So it's really heartening what they've done. I believe I'm pretty sure that if I sell you a pound and a half of weed on the street, Russ, without a license, just on the street, that it's a misdemeanor in Oregon. I believe it has to be over 2 pounds. Of cannabis, and I'm pretty sure no other state has that type of law. So I think it's a little stricter on the growing, but as for sales, that's an amazing thing, and that's happened subsequent to the passing of 91.
Yeah. Another great aspect of our law here is the avenues by which people previously convicted of marijuana crimes can get their records expunged and be able to get into the industry and get other jobs, and affects their security clearance, all sorts of things. So I think Oregon's doing great on that. You can learn more about these things, ask questions of the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, which controls cannabis as well. It's at the Oregon MBC, November 18th and 19th in Ashland. That's Southern Oregon. OregonMBC.com. But right on the heels of that, talking about being a busy guy, the very next month, just 2 weeks later, you're out in Kauai, Hawaii for the ICBC. Give folks a preview of that.
Yeah, that's our ICBC series, and this is we've got events next year in San Francisco, Berlin, Vancouver. We even have one coming up September in Portland that has not been announced till this show. Our very next one is Kauai. It's our first destination event, and so of course we know Kauai is not a bastion of cannabis activity, although a lot of great things happening in Hawaii now with the changes in the law, and it looks like a lot of more great things to come. But what can you say about Kauai? It's one of the most beautiful places on the earth. Normally, it's a very expensive vacation. Our event at the Grand Hyatt in Poipu, a gorgeous 5-star estate hotel that normally your basic room's going to cost you $500 a night. I've got the rooms for $180 a night, starting with the resort fee waived. So really cool. And we've got a lot of great people coming out. There will be some focus on investment and finance. We've got a lot of talk about what's going on in Hawaii, a lot of other things. We've got Morgan Heritage, the Grammy-winning reggae band, doing the after party. We've got Doug Benson coming out for the celebrity interview and doing the welcome for the after party. We got DJ Native Wayne, LA's top reggae DJ, coming out to DJ. We've got Tulsi Gabbard is doing a welcome video for us, and we have a lot of other Hawaiian politicians coming in to represent. So it won't be our biggest event. We're looking for about maybe close to 1,000 people, but it'll be a very intimate event with some really interesting and tight networking, I hope.
That's the International Cannabis Business Conference. You can find the website at internationalcbc.com. And looking at this schedule, my goodness, you got the ICBC in Kauai happening in December 1st through 3rd, in San Francisco, February 1st and 2nd. I've been to the San Francisco event. It's wonderful. In Berlin, Germany, April 11th through 13th. Is this the second time in Berlin or the third?
This will be the second time, yeah.
Yeah, second time in Berlin. And then Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, June 24th, 25th. And do you have dates for this newly announced Portland gig yet?
I think it's the 27th and 28th of Portland, in Portland.
Man,
of September.
That's incredible. And we've heard the good news internationally coming out of Germany with their so-called Jamaica coalition, and that represents the colors of the parties that are making a coalition government now. We just reported how Angela Merkel's party is negotiating with these other parties to legalize cannabis. Who knows? By the time you get there in April, they might have moved forward on that.
Well, we sure got lucky when they did it, when they legalized medical just before our conference, and we've been doing a lot of things to push for legalization. You know how we got into the medical thing, and everyone was saying just keep medical and not pushing legalization. Well, the same phenomena is happening in Germany. So of course, we're not down with that. We don't espouse to those tenets, and we're for complete legalization of all drugs, actually, whether it be legalization or decriminalization, if you want to get into the semantics of what that might be. But yeah, it's so fascinating, Russ, because Europe has had a shift to the right. I barely call it the right because so many good liberals in Europe are shifting a bit right because of immigration policy in Europe, which is very different than immigration. I construe it very differently than I would American immigration policy. I'm personally I'm digressing here a little bit, but I'm a pretty liberal dude, and I'm actually for amnesty. I like strong borders, but I'm actually for amnesty. But what I'm getting to here is the irony of what's happening in Germany is that Merkel held strong with keeping her policy on mass immigration in Europe, and it actually backfired on her. So what? And the conservatives, well, not the conservatives. They're not the real far right who won the 20%. They're the new. Basically, they're called the Immigration Party in Germany, and that's their one issue. They're not the Nazi Party, which does exist also in Germany. The far right party, which also does exist in Germany. They're not that far right. But the irony is that they forced them to get with the Greens, who had never had any real power per se, at least in the Bundesliga, so now the Greens have because they have the Greens and then the Immigration Party and now the Christian Conservatives, which is Angela Merkel's party. Now they're forming a coalition, therefore precipitating a faster path for weed legalization in Germany. So it's the very interesting politics what's going on in Germany right now. The bottom line is cannabis is busting wide open in Germany. Germany will be the new cannabis capital of Europe, whether it's under medical or auspices or legalization auspices. But what's probably going to happen is there's certain liberal districts in certain liberal cities like Berlin, Hamburg, Dusseldorf that will start a legalization model. And so they're talking about doing it federally, but this is also going to precipitate these local endeavors to be expedited because they probably won't get as much federal blowback when they do it.
Yeah, it's interesting also, watching a parliamentary democracy deal with the issue of cannabis legalization, whereas, Angela Merkel and her, ruling party, had they gotten the majority, probably wouldn't taken it up. But being forced to have to work with smaller parties that are more, like, I guess you'd call them fringe in a sense, in that they're calling for legalization, they have to cut deals. And so to get the coalition built, the Greens and the others are saying, hey, we want to see legal cannabis. So it's interesting to watch that work out. And the Berlin ICBC, April 11th through 13th, I know there'll be a lot of discussion of stuff like that. So we've got you in Europe, in Berlin. We got Vancouver, Canada. Any other countries you're looking at for the future, maybe 2019?
Yeah, there sure are. We are looking at Switzerland and Spain, and those are two. We're also looking at doing a really intimate, high-end boutique event in Dubrovnik, Croatia, and so herein lies why this might be the last OMBC because I am just and I think my work is done in Oregon. We might do one more OMBC in a year and a half in Ashland, but I think I feel what I've come to Oregon to do and accomplish and to make people aware of. I think I've pretty much I've done that, and now I feel that my place is more in Europe. I see a big opportunity to push the pedal to the metal. When I saw it in Germany, we got so much attention with media that we actually, when the ICBC comes rolling into an area, we actually help the public. We talk with the local politicians, the administrators, and we help push public policy cannabis public policy in each respective area we go. So we're looking forward to going to Spain, where people think it's all just legal and everything, but it's really not. It's quasi-legal, and that's just for the social clubs. But what Spain's about to do is they're about to legalize medical marijuana, a lot like Germany, and therein lies the real above ground market where real businesses will come in, because there'll be actual clear parameters and codifications of the law where they know where they stand, and they know better than if you're going to say, well, I'm going to open a social club in Spain. So that's what's happening in Europe. They've had this policy of tolerance and harm reduction of sorts, if you will, and now what they're doing is they're creating their laws are being implemented under medical auspices for all of these respective countries first, before they do legalization, which is kind of a natural progression. However, I believe that it's going to be, for us, our first legalization law was medical law was 96, California, and we didn't get legalization until Colorado, 2010 or something, and so 2012 was it only 2012? So that was a long time, right? So in Europe, and I think what's happening in Germany right now is really indicative of that. I think they're going to switch to legalization quicker, because in some ways they've already had this kind of decrim thing for personal use in most parts of Europe, and so it just makes sense that they wouldn't take as much time to get to legalization. So it's a lot, Russ. It can't be understated of the opportunity in Europe right now. It's fresh. I think Yankees who go over there now have a big advantage, because they kind of get to see into the future. Not everything is an analogy over there or directly comparable per se, but a lot of things are, and that's what's happening right now for the Canadians going into Germany, partnering up with a lot of German companies. It's got a real startup kind of feel over there.
How exciting! The International Cannabis Business Conference will be covering all of these different angles. And I got to say, as someone who's covered very many of them, I cover business conferences all over the country. I cover activism conferences. I cover cultural events like cups and so forth. The ICBC is the one I think that puts all three of the legs of the stool of the cannabis community together better than any other, Alex. You got the business thing covered for sure. You're going to learn a lot about the business aspect and the markets, but you focus on the activism angle, that these markets don't grow unless we get involved, unless we change policies and politics. And of course, the cultural aspect is covered. You have some of the best after parties of any of these events I cover, Alex. So thanks for joining us and talking a little bit about it. Anything else you want to leave our listeners with?
No, just want to say, just look out. The ICBC I appreciate you saying that. We do cover all those things. We have politics, activism, entertainment, culture. It's all there. When you come to this conference, yes, the networking is fierce. It's awesome. But I like to say we're as much as a show as we are a conference. And I think that's really important, that when people come to our conference, they really feel part of something bigger, and that they're constantly stimulated and end up saying, hey, that was just a great time, not a slog, which a lot of times if you go to these big expos, though a lot of them are great and serve a purpose, you're not coming out of them feeling energized and ready for the world, and that's what we like. That's what we try to do is inspire folks.
Check it all out at internationalcbc.com. Alex Rogers, the executive producer. Thanks so much for joining us again on our Activist Agenda.
Thanks, Russ. I appreciate you, man.
This episode was produced as part of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville, the daily news and interview podcast covering the world of medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. MJAgenda.com.
The Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville is brought to you by Cannabis Kamikaze, a professional licensed producer from Canada producing 3 pounds per light. Follow Cannabis Kamikaze on Twitter at Cannabis Kamikaze. That's at Cannabis, Kamikaze. Cannabis Kamikaze.
The Marijuana Agenda, like the conservative agenda, minus the hypocrisy.
This November, whether you see the words medical marijuana on your ballot or not, the issue is there. From the halls of Congress to your state capitol or city hall, politicians are already making decisions on medical marijuana policy on your behalf. This election, make sure they are representing you. Every vote is a vote for medical marijuana.
Visit votemedicalmarijuana.org today. Health Cannabinoid, your ACMPR experts. Consultation services for medical cannabis. Visit healthcannabinoid.com or call 1-800-906-1383. That's www.healthcannabinoid.com or call 1-800-906-1383. Health Cannabinoid.
Total war against public enemy number one.
10 federal criminal penalties for up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
Marijuana is probably the most dangerous drug.
Legalization is just another word for surrender.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
This is not medicine. This is a Cheech and Chong show.
Encourage people to use less drugs.
I am ill.
That was the point.
I think it would be a mistake to legalize.
Negative reports coming out of Colorado.
People don't smoke marijuana.
Few issues expose a rift in the cannabis community like the issue of guns in America. As you know, a madman walked into a small-town Texas church this weekend and committed the 4th greatest mass shooting in our nation's history. That happened just a few weeks after the greatest mass shooting in our nation's history in Las Vegas. These shootings have become so common and increasingly deadly that the Columbine school shooting in Colorado isn't even in the top 10 deadliest mass shootings list anymore. Now, half of you listening to this are clamoring for some response from our elected officials to institute common sense regulatory reform. The other half of you are steadfastly defending the Second Amendment and noting how prohibition doesn't work for weed. Why would it work for guns? And I'm not here to pick a side this time. Look, after the Sandy Hook shooting left a couple dozen first graders lying slaughtered in their own blood, and we changed absolutely nothing about our gun laws, I figured that ending the unique gun status quo in America was hopeless. Our nation has decided that randomly sprayed bullets in public places are the inevitable side effect of America's Second Amendment rights. Should you be gunned down in a theater, concert, mall, classroom, nightclub, church, sidewalk, restaurant, or parking lot, well, that's just an act of God. No more foreseeable or preventable than an earthquake or a lightning strike. Your only recourse is to arm yourself at all times, everywhere, and be forever vigilant for that moment when you get to add more bullet spraying to the public square. So no, I'm not here to convince you that we should have some gun control or that we should not have some gun control. What I would like to bring up is something I think we can all agree on. Marijuana is safer than guns. And yet, we treat them the opposite. Imagine if getting a gun and some ammo was as difficult as getting a medical marijuana card and some weed. First of all, there'd be 20 states where you couldn't get a gun legally at all. In the other 30 states, you'd have to show that you have a qualifying condition to use a gun. There'd be a list of such conditions, like, say, public figure, or violent neighborhood, or protection order against an ex, or whatever. And it might be really easy to get a gun in California for any condition a social worker deems you need it, but it might be really difficult to get one in New Jersey. And you'd have to visit a social worker, who would evaluate your qualifying condition and require some documentation to prove it. But most social workers would work for the government or clinics or hospitals that would not allow them to sign for your gun card. So you're going to have to go visit a specialty gun card clinic. It'll cost you about $200 to get your gun card. Oh, and it's only good for 1 year. Now, once you have your gun card, you get to go buy a gun and some ammo. However, many of your states, towns, and counties have issued a moratorium or a ban on all gun commerce. Sure, you can possess guns and ammo with your gun card, but if you want to buy some, you got to drive all the way over to the other county. And when you get to the other county, you can't just go buy all the ammo you want. You're only allowed to possess a 30-day supply of ammo in some states. Oh, in other states, you may only purchase 24 bullets every 10 days. and all those bullets are electronically coded and tracked from munition to shooting, with 24 access to the databases by law enforcement to track who made and who bought every single bullet. Unless you're in one of those states that allows you to make your own bullets at home. But only half of the gun card states will allow you to do that. Plus, some of the states will allow you to buy any type of gun, but the most recent states to pass gun card laws only allow you to use non-handguns. And every state limits how many guns you can possess at one time. Finally, you can't just take your gun out and shoot your bullets anywhere. There is a strict no public view law, so your gun can't even be shown in public, much less shot. There would also be no legal gun ranges, because lawmakers would resist any effort to allow gun users to congregate and use their guns together indoors. You also couldn't take your gun to the great outdoors and shoot it, even on your own private land, if it were possible to see you shooting from a public right-of-way. Now, if you think that would be a ridiculous and unconstitutional infringement of our gun rights, then how is it not a greater infringement when applied to medical marijuana? Now, the response might be, well, Second Amendment. Second Amendment. Our personal right to guns is enshrined there, as interpreted by the Heller Supreme Court decision. But I believe that our right to sow seeds, plant crops, and use medicinal herbs are as sacrosanct a set of constitutional rights as our right to keep and bear arms. Our 10th Amendment states, quote, "The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people," end quote. Well, can anyone show me where in the Constitution the federal government was delegated the right to govern personal farming and medicine? Can anyone show me where in the Constitution it was prohibited, where it prohibited the states from governing personal farming and medicine? And then our 9th Amendment states, quote, "The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people," end quote. Well, our country was founded under the principle that we, the people, quote, "are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness," end quote. Among these rights, as in there are many, many unalienable rights granted by the Creator. And life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, well, those are just 3 of them. The 9th Amendment basically says just because we wrote a bunch of rights down, that doesn't mean those are all of the rights people have. Now I ask you, in a constitution written by 18th century hemp farmers in an agrarian economy, how could they have not considered farming to be an unalienable right? Personal subsistence farming, not commerce clause, personal subsistence farming. And if that is a right, what good is a right to farm if you haven't the right to consume your own crop? So, if we've decided that the people should have nearly unfettered access to machines made for the sole purpose of killing, then there's no logical reason why that same level of access shouldn't be granted to the people for marijuana, which kills nobody. Forget treat marijuana like alcohol. Hey, let's treat marijuana like guns. First of all, growing your own or buying marijuana would be subject to strict regulations and background checks to ensure you don't have a criminal record that precludes you from safe marijuana use. However, the loopholes would be so glaring and omissions so frequent that pretty much anybody who wants some weed could get some. Weed would be legal in all 44 states if it were treated like guns. It'd be legal for you to possess your bong in public and display it in plain view. 44 states, and the other 6 would require you to keep your bong at home. And if you wanted something smaller, like a concealable pipe, you could possess that too, but 6 states would ban you from displaying it in public. Regardless, the possession of bongs or pipes would be legal in all 50 states. If you wanted to conceal some pipes on your person in public, 31 states would allow you to conceal a pipe with no permit at all, though some would require that the pipe has to be empty. And if you got a concealed pipes permit in one state, 37 other states would recognize that permit. And yeah, there'd be specialty stores that carry both paraphernalia and marijuana. Some states might have certain regulations banning dab rigs or what size a bowl a bong could have. But you'd also be able to go buy a general purpose bong and a bunch of weed at any old sporting goods store or a big box store like Walmart. Or you could go to your local weed show and buy straight from an unlicensed grower without all those pesky background checks. Plus, no limits. You could buy and possess as many bongs, pipes, dab rigs, and most importantly, weed as much as you like. And you could take them all with you to any state as long as you unload them and you put them in cases in the trunk of the car. You could buy and possess a loaded bong at age 18 in many states and as young as age 14 in Minnesota. And many states would allow you to go buy weed at the store at age 16. Now, I know the gun issue cleaves the cannabis community along liberal and libertarian lines. And among the greatest marijuana reformers I know are Bay Area gun control advocates and Lone Star State open carry activists. But regardless of which side of the gun divide you land on, you gotta admit, it makes no sense to regulate marijuana more strictly than guns.
Follow MJ Agenda on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and follow MJ Agenda Show on Twitter. Learn more at mjagenda.com.
That's all the time we got for today. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow. And until next time, take care of each other, tokens.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!